Good evening. Good evening, everyone, and welcome. I'll start with a quick confession. Terry doesn't know. When we chose this date for the event, just the date, everything seemed perfect until a friend of mine, Riccardo, over there, we are both Italians, and he said to me, Andrea, but you do remember that on the 26th of March, Italy are playing the World Cup qualifying, right? Now, I didn't remember, but I'm a football fan. So just for a moment, I thought this might be the worst scheduling decision I've ever made. But the truth is, there's absolutely nowhere else I'd rather be tonight. Because in our company, at Ideas on Stage, we have worked with many leaders and speakers on their communication. Some of them are here tonight, but tonight we get to learn from someone who worked at the very highest level. And we get to go behind the scenes of the White House and talk about what it takes to craft messages that reach millions of people. Before we do that, just a very quick intro. My name is Andrea Pacini. I run a company called Ideas on Stage UK. We have Phil Wakenell from our office in France. Phil is the co-founder of the company. Feel free to stand up, say hi. We specialize in working with business owners, leaders, and teams who want to become more confident, more impactful presenters. Over the past 16 years, we've worked with thousands of clients around the world, including business leaders from organizations like eBay, Spotify, Salesforce, Amazon, and over 500 TEDx speakers. Our mission is very simple. We want to stop great ideas from failing just because of the way they are presented. And our vision is to help hundreds of thousands of business leaders inspire their audiences, increase their influence, and make a positive impact in the world. That's it. Enough about us. I would also like to thank the organizations that helped make tonight possible. First of all, Scale Space, who hosted us here tonight. We've got Sodrul from Scale Space and a few others. I really appreciate your support. Thank you very much, Scale Space. And also, Growth Builders, Client Services Collective, Startup Magazine, they've all supported this event. So again, thanks very much to our supporting partners. Now, here is how the evening will work. Our guest speaker will start with a short talk of around 20-30 minutes. Then we'll have a live Q&A, and you have an opportunity to ask your questions. By the way, during the Q&A, do me a favor. Let's try to stick to questions around communication, presenting, public speaking, speech writing, or things connected to them, rather than, I don't want to say politics, but rather than at least current political events. Okay? Of course, if you have curiosities, questions that go back to the Obama era, totally fine. But let's try to stay away from current political affairs. Okay? Promised? Yeah? Cool. Good. Also, at the end, Terry has kindly offered to, for those who haven't done it yet, to sign copies of his book, if you have one. When you came in, you probably saw a leaflet on your chair. It just gives you a bit more information about what we do at Ideas on Stage. It also includes a few free resources for you if you'd like to learn more. So feel free to check it out. Now, I'm curious. How many of you have already read this book? One for sure here. Written and read. Okay, the others, what are you waiting for? Masako is one, of course, you told me earlier. Another one here. What are you waiting for? Huh? Great book. Great book. Check it out. That's what tonight's about. Yeah. Our guest tonight spent 8 years as a White House speechwriter for President Barack Obama. In that time, he helped craft around 500 speeches. This book is one of the best, if not the best book on communication I've ever read. And in the book, he says something I love, among many other things, but one thing in particular. He says that when you speak, You should give the talk that only you can give. You should tell the story that only you can tell, which is very topical if you think about what's happening with AI, the impact of technology also on communication. You should tell the story that only you can tell. This is a book that only he could write. And we have him here tonight, and I know you're going to learn so much. So please welcome Terry Szuplat.
Good evening, everybody. Ooh, that's strong. Okay. Thank you so much for coming out. Andrea, thank you so much for having me here, inviting me here, having me on your podcast. He's actually a podcast host. If you're not paying attention, following him, make sure you do. He's got a lot of great, interesting guests that come on his podcast. And also, thanks for the introduction. I'd like you to join me on the rest of my tour. I think just everything sounds better in Italian. So I appreciate that. A little bit of business before we jump in. A number of you are here because of what I think is the last nice place on the internet. LinkedIn it's often advertised as a job site, but I see it, and a lot of people see it as maybe one of the best learning sites on the internet. And that's one thing I try to do, which is I try to use it to put out tips and strategies and lessons on public speaking and communications. I don't have a newsletter. I don't charge people for my information, except the book. But if you are not already connected on LinkedIn, I'd love to be connected with you. Send me an invitation. I always say yes. A number of you are here tonight because of this. You heard about this through LinkedIn. And just related to that, you're free to take pictures. There's nothing here that's classified. I'm not giving you any national security secrets. You're free to post. You're free to tag me. We only give away national security secrets on Signal and WhatsApp in the United States. So LinkedIn is safe. But again, feel free to take pictures. Feel free to post. I'd love to be connected with you. I feel what I'm trying to do is create a sort of growing community of people who are looking to be better communicators. So to start, I just want to begin by asking you to think for a moment in your own mind. When people come to you, your organization, or you personally, and ask you what you do, what your organization does, how do you typically respond? Maybe it's an investor looking to invest in your company. Maybe it's a partner looking to partner with you, or a potential employee who might be willing to work for you. How do you describe what you do, what your organization does to them? And just think about that for a minute. Most of us have a pretty normal pitch in our own head about what we do and why we do it. I'm going to come back to that. So really want to spend most of our time doing Q&A, but I want to give you some background about who I am and how I got here and why I'm standing in front of you. I was a speechwriter for this guy for about 8 years. I was a foreign policy speechwriter almost all that time, and I was also deputy director of the speechwriting office, helping keep our team and speakers across the federal government on the same page. So a fun job. And I was, you mentioned 500 speeches. Well, that's just a fraction of what he wrote. I was part of an incredible team. This is our speechwriting team at the end. Most of us focus on the president. There are 2 people in that picture who focus exclusively on the First Lady. And I'll just very quickly give you a quick story of what that is. We all have verbal tics, little things that we make as part of our speech. They sometimes annoy our spouses and our friends and our colleagues. But if you don't think you have a verbal tic, ask your friends, ask your colleagues. They'll tell you right away. One of Obama's verbal tics was rejecting notions. He was always rejecting notions. We'd never write this into the speech. We'd say, we need to reject the notion that the economy can't work for everybody. That's more of a Bill Clinton, isn't it? I don't know. But it was just this tic. It annoyed us. And so for his birthday, as a gag gift, someone from our office went through 8 years of speeches and collected all the notions he had rejected in 8 years, put them on a board. So if you look really close, it says all the president's notions. We thought it was hysterical. I mean, we were, stressed and lack of sleep. We gave it to him, and he politely chuckled. I think none of us like having our verbal tics pointed out, but it was a fun moment. And all politics aside, he was an incredible just person and human being to work with. Maybe you like his politics, maybe you don't. He treated us with respect and dignity, and I hope you all work for someone like that in your own life. In the course of those 8 years, our team wrote 3,477 speeches. That's a very precise number.
Chuck, what's it wrong? Very wrong.
What's that? No, that's not me. That's the whole team. So I wrote about 500 of those. But our whole team did this, and we know that's a very precise number. Our chief speechwriter kept track. And that's everything from a massive State of the Union speech down to a little short statement about, a historic anniversary. Every night, we'd send our speeches up to him in a folder like this. Presidents get homework. Those of you who have kids who don't like doing their homework, tell them presidents get homework too. I can speak for the president I work for. He did his homework. Every night he worked on his homework and gave us edits like that in the morning. Because I was a foreign policy speechwriter, I was able to travel with the president to more than 40 countries around the world. And a lot of the stories that I share in the book are stories from those trips. And I'm the first to admit that British people communicate differently than the French, than the Germans. Europeans communicate differently than than Africans and South Americans. But despite all those differences in culture and tradition and heritage, I think there's some fundamental ways that we communicate and connect with each other as human beings. And a lot of the lessons that I share in the book are watching him communicate, using the same techniques to communicate with people all over the world. It could be terrifying to travel with the president. This is Athens, Greece, towards the end of the administration. The audience is in their seats, thousands of people in the arena. The president is backstage, ready to give the speech. And actually, the speech is done. The speech is on my laptop with no Wi-Fi. So that's the look of a speechwriter realizing you are holding up a trip, you are holding up a presidential speech. Thank God for the IT guy. By the way, we got to thank you IT folks. Thank you AV. We got to take good care of our IT folks. They save us. This guy saved my job many times. We would get edits from the president morning, noon, and night, including first thing in the morning when you haven't even had a chance to dress appropriately. In my defense, obviously, I don't know, those of you who know Sesame Street in the United States, they used to have this segment, one of these kids doesn't look like the other. Pick the one that doesn't belong here. I was up all night working on a speech, hadn't shaved, hadn't showered. They got the call, president has edits to his first speech of the day, come on down. I said, I'd rather not. I'm in a t-shirt. But when the president has edits, you get the edits. And then there's the thing about working at the White House, there's always a White House chief photographer there to capture you in your least professional moments. Sometimes he would sit right next to us while we tried to make our edits. This is right outside the Oval Office. Raise your hand if you like it when your boss leans over your shoulder, breathes down your neck, and tells you what to do. None of us like this. I would like to tell you I rose to the occasion here, and I was the consummate professional. This is actually a live action shot. I was frozen, honest to God. This happened a fair amount. And I got to tell you, this next picture I'm about to show you, when I first saw it, I was kind of embarrassed. I was embarrassed when this happened, but I show it because I think it's an important lesson that kind of brings us here today, which is if we weren't moving fast enough, he would just kick us out, sit down, and write the speech himself. So there's the speechwriter way in the back, not writing the speech as the president works on the speech. Obviously, not my finest moment. I'm trying to look really all I'm doing is scribbling on that point. I look like I'm very busy, but I'm not. But I've come to like this because I think there's an important lesson here, which is when we go out and speak, when we communicate, when we know we're going to get up in front of a group of people, they deserve our best. They deserve our best effort. And winging it is one of the worst things we can possibly do. And here's a guy who's not winging it. He's sitting down himself. He's a busy guy. He runs a massive organization. He's still finding the time to craft his words and he's trying to get it right. And I think that's for all of us. We should try and care to get it right. So sometimes his edits were light. This is kind of a quick, light, very, very light edit. Sometimes his edits were a little more significant. It could take us hours to get through these sometimes. And then again, if up there in the residence at night, going through a speech, felt like we missed a big idea, and speeches aren't just about body language, it's about the ideas that we're communicating. If he felt he was missing a big idea, he would just break out the yellow legal pad and write the speech himself. Again, we don't want our presidents and prime ministers doing this every night. It takes a long time. I told you a whole team to support him. But again, to me, this is a leader who's caring enough about the words he's trying to communicate effectively. Well, after 8 years, all good things come to an end. There was a day we went out to the Air Force Base. We We watched them walk up the stairwell. They waved goodbye. They flew off, and that was the end of that. So what do you do? What do you do after you write speeches for a president? Well, you teach students how to write speeches for presidents. So I am back at American University in Washington, D.C., actually where I graduated from, where I studied politics, literally back in the same classes, now trying to share some of these lessons with the next generation, because we sure do need it. We sure do need leaders who speak with clarity, empathy, honesty, integrity. I put a lot of these lessons into the book that Andrea mentioned. And so for those of you who have it, thank you. For those of you who have not yet, maybe tonight will pique your curiosity. I did this, and I travel around the world trying to bring the lessons of the book alive for companies and corporations, because I think, we're all communicators. Just because we don't have the word, spokesperson in front of our title, every single one of us is a spokesperson for our organization. That's why I asked you at the beginning, how do you communicate what your organization does? I wrote this book because public speaking is one of the most common fears all around the world, and survey after survey it shows. People say that they are more afraid of public speaking more than they are afraid of snakes. They fear public speaking more than they fear flying on planes, which I assume means people fear public speaking more than snakes on a plane. I wrote the book because it's really hard to keep audiences engaged, even when you're the president of the United States. This poor kid, I'm sure he wanted to be there. Obama's a great speaker, but maybe Obama just wasn't bringing it that day, and this kid was out. I'm thrilled that the book isn't just my thoughts on how to be a better speaker. There are a lot of his thoughts directly. With his permission, with the permission of his office, I include a lot of conversations from moments like this, the days, the weeks before his speech, where we'd go up and talk to him about what he was trying to say. He's allowed me to include that in this book. So I hope you feel, if you read it, you're not just having a conversation with me, you're having a conversation with one of the great speakers of all time. Whether you like his politics or not, even his fiercest critics admit the guy could deliver a pretty good presentation. He didn't use PowerPoint very well, but he could do a pretty good presentation. I think there's something to learn. One of the stories that I'm proud to share in the book is from that big first speech he gave in 2004 when he was 10 years old. He was 42 years old when he gave that speech. And for those of you who remember, comes out 2004, gives a 16-minute speech. How many of you sat through 90-minute keynotes and they say nothing? He said a lot in 16 minutes. It propelled him to the presidency. But one of the things that really annoyed me after that event was that for years to come, people would say, wow, what a naturally gifted speaker he is. And I thought, what a disservice. He's a 42-year-old man. You think he was born that way? And he told me a story once about when he was a community organizer in Chicago. And he had been giving a lot of speeches. He had raised money all the time to support his work. He was constantly fundraising and giving presentations. One day he had to give a presentation to a bunch of philanthropists, and by his own admission, these are his words, not mine, he got a little cocky, a little overconfident, and he didn't do all the things that are really important to being a great public speaker. He didn't think it through, he didn't write it down, he didn't practice, didn't have it written down in front of him. He goes in there, he looks at this room, a bunch of well-dressed, rich people, gets a little intimidated, starts to lose his train of thought, starts to stammer. It was a mess. It was one of the worst speeches he said he ever gave. So much, I asked him, he's president, boss, do you remember what you felt like in that moment? He said, I remember feeling as a young man, he's in his mid-20s, I remember feeling stupid and embarrassed because he didn't bring the right words at the right moment. And I think a lot of us, including myself, I have had moments like that in my life. We've all had moments like that where we needed to step up and deliver and we feel we didn't. So much for the naturally gifted speaker, right? So my next question to him was, well, how did you go from that 20-something who struggled to give a speech that day to that 40-something guy who gave a speech for the ages? He walked me through all the ways that he tried to get better. He didn't accidentally become a great speaker. He set out to be a great speaker, and he worked at it, and he improved at it. Just like you want to be a great musician, you want to be a great athlete. When you see someone on the right, you're seeing the finished product of years of hard work. So this book, if that's a journey that you want to make, if that's a journey that you're on, this is a book where I share all that with you. But I'm mindful that this book is not saying, here's what President Obama did with the help of 6 speechwriters. You can do it too, because none of us have a team of speechwriters to help us out. So in every chapter of this book, I also, as I tell you, here's what Obama did. Here's the lesson. Here's why it works. And by the way, here's just an ordinary person who did it too. A student, an executive, a veteran, a young activist. Because every now and then we hear people go viral as public speakers, right? Ask yourself, they're resonating with millions of people. And I reached out to them and I include their stories. I want young people especially. I want business people. I want everyone to see themselves in these stories. They did it. And if you go to my website, if you read a book like this, speeches are meant to be heard. They're meant to be experienced. They're not just meant to be read. And so if you read this book, you come across a speech, you can go right to my website. I want to watch that speech right now. I want to experience that Obama speech the way his audience did. I want to see this young girl speech who provoked a national and global conversation about mental health around young women's lives. Amazing people, without any help from a professional speechwriter, gave remarkable speeches, and we can too. But you should still work with groups like Ideas on Stage to be the absolute best you can be. Thank you so much for coming out, and I just hope we can have a great discussion tonight. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, Terry. That was great. For me, in addition to the 4 practical takeaways that you gave us, I'd like to go back to something you said at the very beginning, the idea of preparation. There are people who may think, and that may be true, they may think that they are naturally gifted speakers. Now, recently, just a couple of weeks ago, I interviewed for the second time, some of you may know Carmine Gallo is big when it comes to communication, public speaking. In his latest audiobook, he says something I love. He says, preparation is not something you do because you are bad. Preparation is something you do because you are good. And I think we need to keep that in mind. So before the Q&A, please, another big round of applause for Terry. What we'll do now, we'll open things up a little. I'll start with just a few questions, and then we'll take some questions from the audience. So very simple, if you have a question after my questions, just raise your hand, and then we'll bring a microphone to you. Terry, all right, let's sit down.
All right, this is like Oprah style here.
Yes, Oprah style. Okay, I'd like to ask you something which is connected to this idea about preparation. Mm-hmm. Another thing that you say in your book is that the best predictor of whether or not you'll do a good job when you're on stage is not what happens when you're on stage, it's what happens, it's the preparation that you do before you even get near the stage. Yeah. And very much connected to it is the 50-25-25 rule. For those who haven't read the book, for those who are not familiar with this rule that you recommend, what's the 50-25-25 rule?
So it's just it's a framework that I use. So I think, and it's rooted in the mistake that I think a lot of speakers and a lot of us and I have made at times when you find out you have to give a presentation at work, give a speech, give a eulogy for someone you love, and you're staring at this blank piece of paper. It's terrifying, and the cursor's blinking and taunting you. And the tendency for most people, I think, is just to start writing. Right? Well, if I just start throwing stuff on the page, I'll feel better because now I have something. And then, an hour later, you look at something and you realize that something is nothing because you haven't done the most important first step, which is think it through. So the 50-25-25 rule is just my own sort of rule for how to use whatever time I have. So if someone tells you got to speak in a month, speak in a week, speak in a few hours, speak in a few minutes, you don't have to write anything immediately. Just give yourself some space, some grace, some to be calm, some time to think. I spend about the first 50% of my time thinking, writing, researching, interviewing people, calling, whatever. I'm called a speechwriter, but I've only spent about 25% of my time writing because once you spend so much time researching and gathering ideas, talking to family, friends, coworkers, the writing will come so much easier. You won't have to stare at a blank page because you've already done so much work. And then The last 25%, the part that a lot of people, especially in business, forget because they're really busy, is practice. I've worked with clients, the CEO has to speak at 6 p.m. on Friday. No one has seen the speech, and it's 4 p.m. on Friday. There's no time to practice. The draft gets circulated. No one feels comfortable saying what they really think because there's no time to fix that anyways. So no one wants to be that person. So yeah, I find that it just, listen, someone says you have to speak in a month. That's scary, and now you have a month to freak out about it? No. Just take the first 2 weeks and think and gather your thoughts, talk to family, brainstorm. And teach this to my students. I have found it just incredibly liberating because it takes this big messy thing and gives it some structure.
What I find also liberating is that their role or their approach, if you want, to your preparation works regardless of how much time you have before that preparation. You've got a month, okay, 50, 25, 25. You've got minutes, 2 days, minutes, 50% thinking, researching, analyzing the audience, 25% you start writing, 25% you practice. And by the way, when we say practice, we mean practice, right? Repeating it out loud from the very beginning to the very end without stopping, as if you have the real audience in front of you. Connected to this, now we said, okay, preparation, we need to be prepared. Now, in the book, and this is a bit of a curiosity, or maybe I need some clarification. You say that Obama, I don't know if he was used to this all the time, or maybe sometimes, but my understanding is that he was used to make last-minute changes to his speeches. For example, you mentioned an anecdote even before the day before his acceptance speech when he won the Nobel Prize. The day before, he was making changes to his speech. Now, when we work with our clients, we always encourage them to do what we've talked about so far, to prepare. For example, personally, what I do is I always tend to, if I can, to have 10 days left. The presentation is 10 days from now, and today, content is done, slides are done, so I can spend the last 10 days rehearsing, repeating, preparing. If you make last-minute changes, it's going to be not impossible, but harder to be prepared, at least for those last-minute changes. Mm-hmm. What are your thoughts? What's your approach here?
Yeah, well, he liked to make last-minute changes, so he'd be backstage at an event, and they have a little room set up for him, and he'd be sipping his lemon tea because the lemon tea helped his throat feel good. And if we had 15 minutes, he'd say, "Hey, give me the speech." I'm like, "Oh, don't give him the speech." And he'd sit and he'd cross things out and moves things around. I mean, the audience is in the seats. You can hear the music. They're stomping their feet. They're getting ready, and so we'd have to run the edit down to the teleprompter, But so on the positive side, he was, "Hey, we have 10 minutes. Let's make it 10 minutes better." I would not recommend that to anybody here because that's when mistakes happen. That's when you misplace a page. You cut something that shouldn't be cut. You move something and forget to put it back in. I generally say don't screw around with the content in the last minutes of the speech. So that said, editing and improve, that's part of that 25%, but it should stop
at some point. Okay, I've got one more question, and then please, if you think about something, raise your hand. We'll bring a microphone to you. Something connected to what you said. You said in your talk that rather than overwhelming the audience with lots of data, facts, and figures, you should tell a human story, in particular, the story of one person. Now, I'm thinking about this audience here, and it's not like everyone, but I know some of them, and most of them are business people, business owners. Alistair is the MD of a manufacturing company, for example. We've got David, he works at a bank. Now, what does this mean for them? The idea of telling a human story, and in particular the story of one person, for a business owner, an entrepreneur, a business leader, a business professional.
Yeah. All I'm saying is that as you go out and you make your, I mean, like, you're in business. You have to show that you have to show investors you're gonna make them money. So I'm not saying I'm not saying no numbers ever. What I'm saying is like even as you give a compelling business presentation as to why someone should invest in your company, even the people on the other side, your audience, they're still human beings. They still have hearts. They still respond to things. And so if you have a presentation that's 100% numbers and data, maybe it could be 90% numbers and data, and you can include just maybe one story of one person who bought your product and it changed their life, because that is impressive too. I say this, I often get the same pushback. It's usually something like, well, I'm an engineer and I'm speaking at an engineering conference and they want facts, figures, numbers, and data, and they don't want stories. And I said, who told you who told you that? I mean, did someone actually tell you that? And they're, well, no, I mean, I'm an engineer. I know what I like. I know numbers. So I said, have you ever seen a movie? Have you ever read a book? Oh, I love books. I said, do you go to plays? Oh, I love plays. So you're not just an engineer, you're also a human being who appreciates the power of humanity and change and progress and our ability to improve other people's lives. So we don't turn that off just because we're in our engineering conference. In a quick story, I used to write speeches for Susan G. Komen for the Cure, the global breast cancer organization, right? And that was founded by Nancy Brinker, who lost her sister to breast cancer, and in her dying moments promised her she would dedicate the rest of her life to fighting breast cancer. And it was like many wonderful breast cancer organizations. They're one of the biggest. And this founding origin story was a central part of every pitch she ever made. Because, and I started working for her. I was young, and I had to help her give a speech to a medical convention. So doctors, scientists, I mean, really smart, a lot of number of people, evidence people. And I wrote the speech, and too long, way too long, so I cut some things. And you're going to gasp when I tell you what I cut. I cut the story of her promise to her dying sister.
Ah.
Yeah. I was young and inexperienced and didn't know what I was doing. So I sent it to her, because these are doctors. They're there. They want Komen to invest in their innovations, in their cures, in their right. So I had to cut something. I'm not going to cut the meat. I send it to her. I think she read it for like 2 minutes. My phone rang. I'm like, oh, this is not good. She's like, Terry, where's the story of my sister? I cut it out, and she cut me off. She's like, that story is what sets us apart from every other group that does the same work. That story is why people care about us and invest in us, even the doctors, even the scientists. So I've lived this. I know this. And it is. Even at a medical conference, it's one of the most emotional, memorable parts of her presentations. So I am on a crusade. Again, I'm just saying, if you're inclined to do 100% numbers and data, maybe do 90 and make a little bit of room for a story. Your audience will remember that too.
That's what I like, because that's also a bit liberating for many people, especially engineers, technical people.
You also stand out, by the way, because everybody else at the conference is doing all numbers and data. You will stand out because you're the one who told a human story that actually woke people up, and like, that's different, that's interesting. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, absolutely. And I like that you said, for example, if it's a technical presentation for a very technical audience, you need to have the right mix of logic and emotion. What's right, it doesn't have to be 50-50.
Right.
It could be, in that particular case, 90% logic with facts and figures and 10% emotion with a human story of one person. Okay, now I could go on for hours here, but we've done these not just for us, mainly for you. Who's got the first question? Let's go to Serena.
Thank you very much. That was very insightful. So my question is, in the age of AI, what would you say are the greatest pitfalls within the context of writing speeches that we need to watch out for? What are the do's and don'ts of leveraging AI within the context of your work?
I guess it would be the don't would be don't.
Right. Okay. So absolutely.
So I'm joking. So I would say I use it myself. Listen. It's a great research partner. It's a great brainstorming partner. I have to give a presentation. I'm just kind of stressed out. I don't know what. Just give me 10 topics. It's a great. It's wonderful, right? It's quick. Find me some quotes. Check them. It kind of makes things up. So the kind of thing where we might have in the old days walked down the hall and talked to a human, which is still a good idea, and a colleague. Hey, what do you think? What do you think of this idea? So I use it for. You only have to write 500 words. You wrote 1,000. Help me cut it down. Don't just take it lock, stock, and barrel. But just that was interesting. That could be a way I could get back to 500 words. So for all that, I say go for it. You'll save hours of time. But when it comes time to actually write down the words that you, a human being, are going to speak to other human beings, I beg you, do not use a bot to do that, right? Why are you here tonight? You're not here tonight to hear a presentation written by a machine. You're here to hear from me, and I'm here to see you and talk with you and hopefully connect with you. So these are human moments, human experiences. We are human beings talking to human beings. Again, this say what only you can say. No matter how good these things get, they will never know what's in your heart. They will never know what's in your soul. They will never know what makes you the one in the 8 billion and what you can offer that audience in that moment. And our voice, our story is, and I am preaching this to young people especially, your voice, your story, what sets you apart is your superpower. It's what will allow you to connect emotionally with people, around the world. Don't give your voice over to a machine. And I would say, as AI takes over more and more space and business and life, I hope that we preserve moments like this, right? It kills me when I hear that a preacher has used AI to write a sermon. They've taken time out of their day to sit, and they want guidance and spiritual nourishment from another human being who turned to a machine to do it. I heard someone say, I used AI to write a eulogy for my grandfather. That's not what those people needed in that church that day. So I am begging people, and the big theme of the book is we are at our best as leaders, as citizens, as neighbors, as CEOs, when we bring our heart, when we bring our own life and our own story, and if we give that over to a machine, we're done. We really are. So research partner, fantastic. When it comes time to write the human words that humans want to hear, I think we got to keep it from the heart.
The key is what I'm hearing is to use AI as an assistant, as a tool, but you are the storyteller, you are the communicator. Next question, Chris, and then we go to Chris and the lady.
And I'll be around for a little while too, so if we
so just so you know, we've got half an hour, so we can lots of time for questions, and then after that we've got the space until 8 for other questions and a bit of networking. Chris, what's your question?
Super starstruck right now. Believe it or not, I actually wanted to be a speechwriter when I was a kid.
Wow.
I wasn't good at sports, so
You're like the first human ever. I just spent the day yesterday with 30 speechwriters from around the world, and no one wants to be a speechwriter when they're a kid. Everyone just falls into it. When I couldn't get into law school, I became a speechwriter. So that's amazing.
I wasn't cool. So, but my question is, I guess, kind of tagging on that, in the world, I guess, when there's so much resource out there and there's so much assistance you can get from AI, how is it that leaders are still screwing up when speaking? I feel like there's so much out there that they've probably got speechwriters and they've got AI that can help, but yet they're still not hitting the mark. I'm wondering what would be your take on how they're still not nailing it, if that makes sense, when there's so much in their favour in this day and age.
There's lots of reasons, but there are a lot of particularly in business, because I'm preaching this whole root your presentations, your stories in your experience. Don't just be a talking head for your organization. That's scary for a lot of people. It's just easier to get up and talk about the product, talk about the service, talk about what the company does, and to never ever once open up about why you believe so deeply in that company, what motivated you to join that company in the first place. And so if you don't believe in that, you end up giving really generic, boring, totally forgettable presentations. If you're a speechwriter who hasn't read Say It Well, now you might not know that you should be pushing your boss in this direction. And if you are a speechwriter or a speaker who just gives generic speeches, well, those speechwriters are going to lose their job. Like people say, are you worried about the speechwriting profession or the writing profession? I'm not. I'm more. If you write bad, generic, awful speeches, yeah, you probably have no future because AI can write bad, generic speeches. But if you're writing deeply personal presentations or presentations that weave the human spirit or weave in the spirit of the company more, that's someone. There's a guy I saw online. He said, here's a speech that I wrote with AI. It only took me like 780 prompts in 4 days. And I'm like, I don't think the AI wrote the speech at that point. I think you did. I mean, every prompt, at that point it would have been quicker to just write it yourself. And it wasn't very good. It was fine, but it wouldn't have moved you to tears. So I'm like, at that point, just do it yourself. I think it's just safer not to, it's just safer not to open up and share ourselves and to be personal. It's scary. And I realize a lot of the stories I tell in the book, particularly of young people, they get up and survivors of abuse. Talk about their experience, and it's hard and it's scary. And I gave a presentation recently to a group of young people and made this whole pitch. A young woman came up to me. She said, my mother was a victim of an abusive relationship, and she took her own life. And people have asked me to come speak to them about my experience of how I've dealt with that. And I've never been able to do it because I didn't know how, and I didn't know if it was useful. But after hearing why it's so important to share our personal stories, to say what only you can say, I'm going to go out and do it now. And I know that, and she said, I think I can help other people by doing that. But that's really scary. So I think that's one of the big reasons why a lot of leaders just flop. They're boring, they're generic, it's safer. Sorry, I got shorter answers.
Thank you.
And I think, Chris, in addition to these, I'll give you my thoughts just in one sentence. I think it's also lack to preparation. Can we go back to that? Yes, we have the tools, we have the knowledge, we know what the fundamental principles of communication that work today are the same principles that worked 2,000 years ago. We know if we don't know them, there are ways to find them out. But if we don't act on them, if we don't do something with them, if we don't prepare, that's what happens. Now, we have a question over there in the middle. Then after this, sorry guys, there's Phil, after that we'll have a question there, and then we'll come back here, okay?
I really love that we landed back on preparation because that was what my question was about. And I wanted to hear your thoughts on where preparation or over-preparation kills authenticity. I am an early stage startup founder, and we are building tools to take the pain out of cervical screening. And I felt that the pitches that where I connected most with my audience and where people really came up to me and shared their own stories were the ones where I did not memorize, but rather knew my talking points and then entered some sort of a state of flow, which allowed me to speak from heart and, yes, deliver a coherent narrative, but be able to pivot, not really stumble if I use the wrong word. And that felt like it really landed, and it really allowed me to connect with people on an emotional level. But when I try to write a script and memorize it and prepare, I felt that it didn't fully deliver the same kind of emotional charge. I wanted to hear your thoughts on that, Terry.
I'm really glad you asked that because, I hear this all the time. I don't want to be over-scripted. I want to be authentic. When I hear someone say that, and I'm not saying that's what you said, you're triggering this ongoing conversation I hear all the time, is that it's an either or. You can be scripted or you can be authentic, but you can't be both. And I totally don't. I mean, did you ever hear a Barack Obama speech? Did you find him, or whoever you admire, did you find them authentic? He's 100% scripted, at the speeches at least. So it's not, to me, it's not like scripted versus non-scripted. It's authentic versus non-authentic. You can, are you truly speaking from your heart? I think in your case, you clearly have found a place where you can get up and you can, you know your story, you know what's important to you. That's authenticity. Now, if you can someday, watch 5 of your presentations, get a transcript, now it's written out, it's scripted. You could practice it, you could improve it, you may still choose to deliver it. So to me, authenticity is about sharing and telling real stories that you really care about, right? And that's part, and I'm actually not, yes, there comes a point where I would never recommend that you practice out a speech 200 times. But I have heard of people practicing speeches 100 times, and that makes them better. I think in the end, it's whether the story, it's whether the content is real and authentic, and whether you sense that person really believes it. I asked Obama once, and I couldn't believe anyone had never asked him this before. What do you think makes a great public speaker? And he said, to me, it's someone who knows who they are, knows what they believe, and speaks from a place of conviction. And we've all heard speakers, especially in politics, and you're listening going, I don't even know if they believe what they're saying. I think their pollsters told them to say that. I think you can see the gears turning. I think I'm, in response to that question, I'm supposed to say this because that's what a majority of voters think. You can sense it, right? That's inauthenticity. So I think knowing who you are, knowing what you believe, and speaking from a place of conviction, and if practicing it 100 times helps you and makes you better, I'm all for it. If practicing it 5 times, if writing it down, I'm a big advocate in writing it down because I do think it's what lets you, you can't practice if you don't have a script. But yeah, to me, I think that's what real authenticity is. I'm glad you've found, it sounds like you've found that. And I'm sure it resonates, so thanks for the question.
I'll add just one thought and then we'll go over there. Sometimes, I'm not saying again that this is where you are coming from, but what I see lots of times with the people we work with is that sometimes authenticity is used as an excuse for not changing, for not improving. Of course, I'm totally with you. You want to be authentic.
Don't script me.
Yeah, but at the same time, you want to improve as a communicator. So the goal should be to become the best authentic version of yourself. And also connected to this, I've learned from Phil years ago that, and then since we started working together, I've seen it with the clients, that essentially there are 2 types of speakers. You have the memorizers and the improvisers. And there is now, by the way, first of all, it's a spectrum. It's not that you are either 100% here, memorizer, or 100% over here, improviser. It's a spectrum. For example, I'm 70% towards the memorizers. Maybe you are different, I don't know. But it doesn't really matter whether you are a memorizer or an improviser. What matters, and especially for improvisers, we always encourage our clients to be prepared, to practice, to rehearse. If you are an improviser, every time you rehearse, you may say in a slightly different way. That's okay. But I can promise you, for improvisers here, whatever you say will be much more powerful the 5th time you say than the 1st. Question over there, please, in the middle of the room.
Yeah, Terry, thanks very much for sharing your thoughts today. Just following on from the previous thought was around the power of emotion, how to use it either in a planned or unplanned way, and when it doesn't go well, when emotions can take over, ways of dealing with that, and so your thoughts around use of emotion and vulnerability.
Oh, I mean, I think that's a massive theme of the book. I tell when we get up and share, when we're vulnerable, when we open up, what it does is it creates a space for your audience who may be feeling the same thing to acknowledge that and meet you. One of the best compliments you can get, I think, as a public speaker, and I heard this a lot after Obama's speeches, was he spoke for me. He said what I was feeling, or by him admitting a mistake, it's humbling. It levels the field. It allows you to connect with your audience. And again, if you're trying to have a human connection with someone, one of the most effective ways to do it is open up. I told a story in the book about this. One of the young people on the screen, she was a teenager in Arizona, had to give a speech in front of her class. She decided turns out she was being bullied. She had body dysmorphia. She was going to all sorts of issues. I mean, being a young girl today. And she decided to get up and deliver her speech about that in front of her classmates, including some of the very people who were bullying her. And my God, what a risk she took. She did it. And two big things happened. One was the moment she stopped speaking, her entire class got up, rushed forward, and embraced her, including the people who had been tormenting her. They were in tears, and they admitted, we feel a lot like you, and we were lashing out at you to compensate for our own pain. Insane, but this is how the world works. Second thing that happened is a classmate filmed it. It went viral. Her name is Olivia Vella, Vella. It went viral, sparked a global conversation about mental health, how we talk and treat young girls. Women of all ages wrote to her, wrote letters. I tell her whole story because she had the courage to stand up and be vulnerable. It allowed the space for other people to come forward and to make progress on an issue that is really important. She didn't use a professional speechwriter. She just had the wisdom and courage of a teenager to do that. That's why the book has a lot more stories like that than the politicians, because frankly, I don't think most politicians give very good speeches. That to me is like the class. That's why it's so important to be vulnerable.
Masako, when you came in, I told you that reading his book, there were some parts of the book that made me cry. Which is a bit unusual for a book on communication, but I did cry reading his book a few times, and that was one of the
because it was so long? You're like, I just wanted to end. No, I'm just kidding.
Okay, so we have a question here, and then we go to the gentleman. Over here, please. Second row, Xavier. Second row, please. Yeah. No.
Oh, hi.
Yeah.
Thank you. I've been thinking about this today in the context of business. So I've had quite a lot of experience in my younger life doing public speaking in front of very large audiences, on stages, talking to motivational types of topics, telling these kinds of stories. In business, I've been very much schooled to be thinking in business context, presentation context, to be thinking about the audience. How are we going to take this situation that we have and explain it in a storytelling kind of a manner to convince our client about whatever it is that we believe they need to do next on the basis of research or work that we've done. I found it kind of interesting in the past years as I've tried to get into writing, let's say blog pieces or something like that. I found it very difficult, and I finally figured out that I don't enjoy it very much because I can't do the audience analysis that I would usually have done, both in terms of thinking about who's my audience, because I don't know where this is going to go and who's reading it. I like the interaction, or at least being able to feel the emotion in the room with the people and understanding if it's resonating. And in the past, when I have been unsure about an audience, I have switched to focusing on a bit, what's my purpose? Why am I here today? If I don't know exactly what's going to go on with this audience, I'm kind of unsure, but what is at least my purpose versus that speaker, that speaker, that speaker? What am I here to do, my role as the X person in this organization? So makes me kind of think about the question that you were asking is, why do so many speakers fall flat with all of the resources and everything else? And I've been working with somebody who was this phenomenal kind of hopeful, et cetera, person, but it wasn't landing. And so I'm thinking a little bit about the fact that many people now have been schooled in environments where we are speaking one way on social media or one way in interactions. We're not necessarily getting that back and forth. And I'm wondering to what extent how you think about audience analysis and how you think about using purpose, which you just spoke about a moment ago, in that context, and what you would say to that.
Yeah, I mean,
particularly in business, it's difficult.
Sure. I mean, one of the most important things you need to do in that 50% of your time before you ever write a word is spend a lot of time thinking about the audience. And we did that at the White House. I list in the book all sorts of questions you should ask about your audience. We would say it's important to know your audience. Well, what does that mean? To me, there's about a dozen or so questions that go into that. But the big one more than anything is like, what are they feeling? What do they need? What's their mood? Are they up? Are they down? What are they looking for from you? Like you know your company, you know your mission, you know your purpose. And I think the problem that a lot of leaders make, especially in business, is they just go and get, like a lot of politicians, they just do the same speech everywhere all the time because my company hasn't changed from Monday to Friday. I haven't changed from Monday to Friday. But guess what has changed? Your audience. So that speech that might have been perfect for the Monday audience might actually be the completely wrong speech for the Tuesday audience. And if you're just giving the same speech all the time, you're going to fall flat. You're going to miss opportunities. You talk about, just because a lot of us are in this space, know your audience. But there's 1,000 people in the audience, 1,000 different people. Like, what do you do with that? One of the things that I encourage people to do in the book that I've always done as a speechwriter is, like, it is true. Obama would give speeches to thousands of people. They're all over the place. Liberals and conservatives, old and young, and I think, how do you possibly do it? One of the things that I often try to do, just pick one person, ideally maybe someone you know, someone might be in that audience. Think of a friend or a family member, someone you know, and write the presentation for them. Just give the best possible because you know that person. You know what they care about. You know who they are. Let them be a stand-in for the audience. And I did this. I grew up in Massachusetts. I'm from Boston. So after the Boston Memorial bombing, I asked if I could work with the president on that speech. I really wanted to do something that I knew would be meaningful for my family and friends back home. The whole week I was thinking of my family and friends. I wanted to write a speech for them, particularly my very conservative uncle who did not like Barack Hussein Obama and told me every time I saw him he did not like Barack Hussein Obama. But I thought if on that day, maybe, just maybe, Barack Hussein Obama could break through and reach my uncle's heart by thinking, what does he care about? Like, why does he love this city so much? What are the traditions and the values and the cultures? What is the spirit, the values, the resilience, the defiance, the things people like and hate about Boston? Like, if Obama could speak to that, to someone like my uncle, then he could pretty much kind of get. So I wrote it for him. I didn't tell him, but I did. And then actually after the speech, I got a voicemail from him. And I had imagined him, again, I had imagined him watching it in a pub, because he spent a lot of time in the pubs in Boston. And I could tell from the voicemail, from the clatter in the back, that he was in a pub. And he said, in his thick Boston accent, I just wanted you to know, the president gave a very fine speech, and he hung up. And that was as much as he was ever going to say about Barack Hussein Obama. But it meant the world to me that the very person that I had tried to maybe break through, and I think it's a really effective, you have to write a eulogy for someone. You can't write it for your whole family. I gave a eulogy recently for another uncle, and I was starting to get caught up in all sorts of things. I was like, I'm just writing this for his wife. And if she's happy, that's all that matters. I'm writing it for her and her kids. Just pick one person in your company, one organization. You're writing a blog post. I mean, you don't even. I do a lot on LinkedIn. I often try to think, okay, today I'm going to write this for just a 25-year-old who's at the beginning of their career, just trying to find their voice. That's my audience today. And see how it goes. Or today I'm going to write for the 65-year-old CEO who's been running this company and has kind of lost their voice. It's simpler, I think.
We've got time for 2 more questions. We'll go with the gentleman here first. Now, Terry, he's a body language expert.
Okay.
So I'm sure he's been paying attention to the way we are seated. I don't know if the question is connected to that.
I've been slouching the whole time.
Thanks,
I wave my
Terry.
hands too much.
Yeah, no, they're absolutely fine. Thanks for coming out and sharing your insights with us. And one of the things that's been fascinating for me as a communications coach over the last 20 years is to be able to look at the finished product. So, like, I sat for 2 days and analysed Barack Obama's inauguration speech in 2,509 words, etc. You know, and then to be able to go to people, right? There were these hand gestures. There was this use of voice. And in particular, as a speechwriter, what I'm curious about is the use of rhetorical techniques, you know, like triples and alliterations, contrasts, etc. So to be able to point to them and go, well, that's what's there, that's what really works. But now tonight, I can get a peek under the hood. And how do you arrive at how many rhetorical devices to use, and where was President Obama giving you the ideas and then you would structure it with the rhetorical techniques? Or I'm just really curious, would he say, actually, that needs a triple there, Terry? We need to say that in threes or alliteration, because I know he used them all a lot.
Right.
Was that you? Was that him? Was that a combination? And a kind of a secondary question is, can you overdo the rhetorical devices as well? And then it starts to sound a little bit odd.
Yeah. You can overdo rhetorical devices. You can overdo rhetorical devices. You can overdo rhetorical devices. I'm really glad you asked this question, because this is not the first public speaking book that's ever been written. There's many of them. And I read as many as I could before this. I had my own ideas. I knew what I wanted to say, but I did want to make sure that I was writing the book that only I could write. And if the books all say the same thing, I didn't want to just say that. And I am concerned, and I'm trying to democratize this a little bit, because I do worry that in a lot of these other books that I've read, they said, you need great speakers, know pathos, logos, and ethos. I'll tell you, you think this is insane. I did not know what those words were before I ever became a White House speechwriter. Maybe I should have. I never took a speechwriting course. I never took a course in rhetoric. I never took a training course. I never got to work with someone like you. But I did spend decades of my life listening to people, great speakers, ordinary speakers, trying to understand what people reacted to. And so there's a lot of those speeches that I talk about in the book, the kids, the veterans, I don't think they had rule of three. But I think they told a hell of a story about themselves and about the kind of world they want to live in. Ask not what you can do for your country. Ask not what your country can do for you. Ask what you can do. Right. There's a Latin. It's called chiasmus or chias. I can't even pronounce it. Obama never came to us and said, you know what this speech really needs more of? Chiasmus. Because I don't think he knows that word either. But he does know how to communicate and connect with other human beings. I think in part because he worked as a community organizer. So one of the things I've tried to do in the book is say, if you want to repeat something 3 times, go do it. It kind of creates a little bit of rhythm, a little bit of beat. It's nice. It kind of brings some cadence and rhythm to your speech, and that's great. But if you want to do it 6 times and it feels good, do it 6 times. And if your audience is with you, do it 6. There's nothing. I mean, there's 3 is great. And so he was never. Just to answer your question, he was never like sending drafts back, going, this should be rule of 3, more ethos, pathos. I mean, I see people do these studies and say, well, he did 36% pathos, he did, 46%. I'm like, I was there. I think it's not how we did. That's not how we did it. But we were reading this, going like, this would be a really powerful way to connect with this community, or this would be a powerful story. In all those 8 years, no one ever said to me, more logos, more pathos. We were like, I just don't think this argument is compelling. And so, but I think he had I think, you do this enough. I mean, you work with a lot of people, right? I will say this, I didn't really do much public speaking until after I left the White House. I wish I had done more because, it's one thing to sit behind a computer screen and imagine yourself writing for this other person, in this case the president, but until you are at a podium looking out for 10, 20 minutes, 60 minutes, you learn, wow, at about 20 minutes, they're starting to check their phones. That guy's dozing
Maybe
off.
even earlier.
Maybe even earlier. And they're getting fidgety. And this thing needs to move. And this, I think I have a much deeper appreciation for that in-person reaction. And when you lose people, what they need, why it's important to keep people engaged. Because again, I think this is a human experience. And if people aren't engaged, if they're not being moved, we tune out. But yeah, no, it's funny. It's all there, right? It's all there. All the ancient techniques are there. I totally. It was just, but it wasn't conscious. It wasn't. And that's why I think I worry in some ways that I think that some of the ways that rhetoric is taught in the world scares kids off. Like pathos, logos, what are they? The words. They're these old words that I don't understand, and it sounds. It's the kind of jargon that puts people off, and we want more people speaking up. We want this idea of public speaking to be attractive to people, not so scary. But thank you for what you do for people and bringing them. Because also a lot of people are like, what do I do with my hands? And anyways.
So we don't have to learn Greek to be able to speak in public and to do it well.
You don't need to know any of that stuff to be a great. All these people I put in the book, I guarantee you, I didn't ask them, I guarantee you none of these people know any of those terms and those techniques. And they inspired millions of people.
What they do know, I think, either consciously or maybe intuitively, are the fundamental principles of communication, the things that connect with an audience.
Yeah, of how to be like a good human being.
Yeah, exactly.
That's like...
We have one more question, and then we'll wrap up.
Okay, well, Terry, you know my background, national security, so I'm a great improviser, as Martin will tell you. And I have one question.
Okay.
Will you come and work for Keir Starmer?
Well, I think I'm as an American, am I allowed to do that? Yes. Without getting it, I don't follow British politics as closely as I should, but I think I know where you're coming from. And we have this problem in many countries where in moments of like profound importance, you've got leaders who are kind of falling back on generic, uninspiring kind of, and so I guess, if I were working with someone, the first thing I do when I sit down, and this is a good last answer, again, I'll stick around and talk. I do this with all my clients because your audience can't know you and believe in you and be inspired by you if you do not know who you are and what you believe. Again, back to what are your beliefs, who are you, what are your convictions? And I think there's a lot of, I'm not referring to any specific person here, but I think there are a lot of people in public life, particularly people who've served in public office for decades. It's their job. And they're running for things because that's what I do. I run for things. And it just so happens that now I'm running this year and I haven't thought deeply about what my audience needs and feels at this moment, and therefore I haven't ever thought deeply about who I am and why I do this work. I was working with a client once who had to stand up and give a commencement address at her alma mater. She was highly accomplished, brilliant person, rich and wealthy and powerful, just did success in every business that she's done, but also failed. And it's like, you're going back to your alma mater. This is a great, they're just beginning their journey. Maybe you could share something from your life that might inspire them. And so let's talk about your life. Tell me about your childhood. No. tell me about college. I'd rather not. You know, I know some of your early ventures failed. Could we talk about? Well, it was kind of upsetting. I'd really rather not talk about that. Okay, so the speech was. I'm exaggerating, but the speech ended up being things like believe in yourself. It's inspiring. I think the other idea was, and this is good. When things get hard, don't give up. You know. I mean, just and pablum, and I say it, but that we see that in business, we see that in politics. When you are like hearing the same thing for the thousandth time, and you know these politicians give these speeches, the same speech that they've been given for years, with the same poll-tested language, and they wonder, why isn't this resonating? Why isn't this landing? Well, because people have heard it all before. It means nothing anymore. A wonderful word that I hope you all start using in your life. We all know about jargon and buzzwords and cliches. Word salad, that means nothing. Tastes bad, is bad, looks bad. Bafflegab. Bafflegab is just nonsense, right? It is a beautiful, I don't know, it sounds like it's a British word. It sounds like it should be British. But like so many politicians and businesses, it's just jargon and bafflegab, and you don't get a sense of who they are. So I think what really is needed among certain people is they need to sort of get back to first principles and ask, like, what am I doing here? Why do I do this work? What does my audience need right now? And boil it down and keep it simple. I teach political speech writing at American University, and I ask my students, you know, what does that candidate want to accomplish? And if they can tell me 1, 2, 3 things right off the top of their head, that's an effective communicator. If I ask them, what does that candidate want to accomplish, and they scratch their heads, that's a terrible communicator. And I think in this country and in other countries, people are scratching their head going, I don't know why you're here, and I don't know what you're trying to accomplish, so I'm probably not going to vote for you. But that's it. But that's a great, again, back to the thing. Who am I? Why am I here? Why do I do this work? When you lead with that, people see you, they believe in you, they're inspired by you. You'll be a better leader and a better communicator.
I know that there were a few other questions, but we need to stop here so we can stay on time. Terry, thank you so much for
Appreciate it.
A few things. Yes, please give it up. Thank you for accepting our invite to be here. Thank you for sharing your experience, your insights with us. Now, before we wrap up, if you don't mind, let's just close with something. If you don't mind, Terry, just...
Oh, yeah, right.
Just before we wrap up, I'd like to leave you with one simple thought. In business, in leadership, in our careers, many of the challenges we face come down to one thing. What's that thing? What do you think? Any ideas? Confidence, experience, minds, communication. Who said communication? Communication. How well we express our ideas, how well we connect with people, how well we inspire others to act. Events like these are a good start, but the real impact comes from what you do next. If you think about the people who are making an impact, also thanks to their communication skills, they are the ones who choose to be intentional about it. So, if something you heard tonight resonated with you, my invitation is very simple. Don't wait. Start working on it. Do something with it. And if you'd like to start or continue your journey to becoming the best presenters, the best communicators you can be, if you want, feel free to scan the QR code on the leaflet on your chair. There are just a few free resources there for you. We have the space until 8, so please stay, meet a few people around you. There are some very interesting people in this room. Terry will also be signing copies of his book for those of you who have one, if you don't have a signature yet. And thank you very much. Thank you for choosing to spend the evening with us. It means a lot to me. Keep communicating, keep inspiring, and enjoy the rest of your evening. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thanks again.
That was awesome. That was great.